Hey everyone, Darkspire David here with another episode of Play It or Station It, where I take a PlayStation exclusive game, talk about it very briefly, review it off the cuff for your entertainment. And I know that these videos have been a little sparse, not just for the PlayStation ones, but also the Xbox ones. I'm hoping to rectify that very soon as we kind of course through the summer with an awful lot of hot releases. But recently I just beat Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart on stream, so I'm finally ready to talk about it in its entirety and give my opinion on it, where basically, this is the next entry in the Ratchet & Clank series, but this is the one that's built from the ground up for the PlayStation 5, exclusively for the PlayStation 5 console, and it's definitely apparent right off the bat. Not if you didn't get that gist from the trailers, you're definitely gonna get it once you load this game up, or once you watch somebody play this game from the PS5 system, because right off the bat, the graphic fidelity behind this game. I know that this is a cliche thing sort of to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It is in fact like playing a Pixar game. From the graphical fidelity, the animation, the design, the scope of the city, and the different dimensions that you kind of go in between. But it really does show what the power of the PlayStation 5 can really do from the hardware standpoint. Being able to use the SSD and the graphics card inside to load up these different dimensions, these different environments, and of course the character renders and animations that are very fluid, especially when you're playing on performance mode with the ray tracing on. It's just glorious, and the ray tracing definitely comes through. At times it is a little subtle to kind of pick up on the areas that you can see and not see, but it really is a masterclass in animation and fidelity. Now, with that said, there is a proper fidelity mode that is native 4K with ray tracing and textures and all that stuff turned on, but the option reads 30 frames a second. Gotta be honest, I don't know. I'm not Digital Foundry here. I'm just one guy trying to play video games. But my naked eye at least, felt like this wasn't even 30 frames. This was more like 24, 25 frames. And I know that there is the option to do a 40 frames per second option with HDR and the 120 hertz and kind of mix and match. Albeit, I will admit that any casual player is going to look at these options and feel just a little overwhelmed with exactly how to toggle one thing with another. Sometimes the HDR being on made the color a little opaque, and I don't know if that was just my TV settings or the fact that I'm also streaming this game, and so kind of flushing through my HD 60S Plus capture card from Elgato was having an effect on that. Granted, that capture card is described to be able to handle HDR, so I don't know. I didn't tinker with it enough. I just went with what exactly looked really pleasing to me, which was having the performance ray tracing with the 60 FPS, and everything looked absolutely gorgeous. And also the voice work as well as the sound effects and everything, visually and audibly, this game is really polished and top notch. Now, where it doesn't really shine, at least as much as I was hoping to, is more so on the writing. The story is pretty good, being able to go to different dimensions, but it does lean more so on feeling like more of a demonstration of what the PlayStation 5 can do, rather to actually give a really good excuse to flesh out Ratchet and Clank even more. Now, granted, we have a ginormous franchise of games to extrapolate from as far as character development with these two, especially even a remake that was released back in 2016. So the star of the hour is this brand new Lombax named Rivet from a different dimension. And there's also another character, but being that this other character was not being utilized in the marketing material, I'm going to go ahead and just not mention anything about this other character, just in case, for the sake of spoilers, especially to kind of keep some surprises under wraps, because that's actually one of the more pleasant things about this game, is that as the game does unfold, there are a couple of little things here and there that were very surprising to see and kind of see blossom on screen, especially, like I said, from a graphical standpoint. But with the character of Rivet, she is a welcome addition. She's played wonderfully well, and she's very compelling and likable. But there just wasn't this thing, this X factor that made me hook up with her in a way that made me go, yes, I definitely want to see another installment with her. Granted, that's kind of the intention or the hinting that Insomniac is kind of dropping is that Rivet may be taking over the franchise from Ratchet and Clank, or perhaps maybe in a more of a spin-off capacity like Lost Legacy was to Uncharted 4, where we had Chloe and Nadine doing their own thing. Maybe that's what we're going to really have with Rivet and this other character, and that's kind of what they're hinting at. But for the time being, she's likable enough to get that done and make me intrigued in another installment with them being the central characters. But if that is the case, but within an isolated instance like this game, I felt like story-wise, it was just kind of okay. You know, the story kind of went through, I'm not going to say went through the motions because I don't want to harp on it too negatively, but the story was just kind of there when they were trying to get these different universes and trying to save the day, and then having these cameo appearances by either mainstay characters from the franchise or versions of those mainstay characters, but then inverted because they're meant to be different versions of the characters in other dimensions, and seeing these other dimensions from, like I said, the environmental standpoint, it's all really cool. And that's ultimately the feeling I have with this game, is that even though it wasn't like this monumental stepping stone for the Ratchet and Clank franchise, it does a really good job of kind of giving off this roller coaster ride feeling, not just in the visuals, but also the gameplay. You know, bringing back what really makes Ratchet and Clank special, which is the gameplay with the guns and the assortment of guns and what these guns can do. That was not lost. That's where the heart of this game really lies, is being able to kind of switch back and forth between these guns, have fun with them, having funny moments with them, but also just feeling ultimately very badass. Although that badassery came at a trade-off, and I don't know if maybe it has something to do with the culture we're in right now with gaming and how things have gotten correct, whether it be politically or socially or whatever, but even on the normal difficulty setting, I actually had to bump this up to the hard or slightly harder difficulty, you know, one notch above, to actually get a bit of a challenge. And that's ultimately where I finished the game at, is on that much harder difficulty, because on standard, I made my way into 5 hours with this thing, and I had yet to have died, and whatever boss fights the game was really throwing at me were done in mere seconds, like not even minutes, seconds, and I'm over here like, I don't know if it's just me, or maybe I'm just that good. Or maybe there's certain aspects about this game that do kind of placate a little bit more towards the children. And I don't know if maybe it's because the developers have children of their own, but not only was the gameplay just a little whittled down as far as difficulty, but also a little bit of that storytelling techniques that I mentioned before. Like I said, it wasn't really hitting or scratching that right itch as far as delivering a really good, solid arc for all of our characters involved. In fact, there were times where the game gets just a tiny bit cringy as far as delivering that message about friendship and saving the day and you know, being comfortable with yourself. There's one character in particular that is introduced during certain points of the game that introduces a brand new mechanic in the form of Glitch, a little spider bot. And I don't know if this is like an asset reused from Insomniac's Spider-Man games, but she goes around introducing this new segment of the game that's very a la Space Invaders, where it's kind of like a on-rail shooter, but you're kind of navigating through the rails while trying to also kind of rid the place of viruses inside of the cyberspace. And even though it is a fun segment, there were times where Glitch herself was just getting on a couple of my little nerves. And at times the game has that thickness of, you know, laying it there with the whole moral of the story that I'm like, all right, you know, the 2016 game handled this just a tiny little bit better with its arcs, whether it had to be with the introduction of Ratchet to Clank or Quark's catharsis of trying to realize that he's not all that. You know, all those things were just handled just a little bit better with that 2016 remake. But at least this game is very diverse as far as its pacing with, again, that gunplay, being able to assort the different guns and buy them and level them up. You know, that stuff is always addicting and fun. And then varying the gameplay with these glitch missions or these segments where you have to solve these different puzzles as Clank within these anomalies that really kept the pace going, leading all to a finale that was very bombastic. And again, sprinkled here and there are these rail segments that are very roller coaster like and very fun, especially seeing them jump in between dimensions. It's a visual roller coaster ride that was able to get the job done and really hammers home across the point as to why this PlayStation 5 architecture is really important, is that environments and experiences like this can happen on an even bigger scale. So just to think that we can take what Ratchet and Clank was able to do here on a visual level and then pair it with a proper story that will definitely get the emotions riling, can definitely make me cry, can make me never forget these characters and never forget certain scenes, and kind of bring that with me even after I roll credits. It really kind of gives me the idea of what the future can be with the PlayStation 5. And Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is definitely a recommendation if you're a huge Ratchet and Clank fan, or if you do own a PlayStation 5 and you want a brand new experience to show you why you got this console in the first place. And then I definitely say that Rift Apart is definitely a game that you should play. But with that said, falling upon the matter of preference, the 2016 remake is probably a better solution, especially with its recent 60 frames per second patch. That does it for me, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of Rift Apart. If you have played it, if you have not, will you be picking it up when you do eventually get a PlayStation 5? Like and share this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more of these little videos for the Play It or Station It series, or the Game Pass or Pass the Game series, other on that Xbox camp. And until next time, guys, stay safe and stay humble.